All right, well, hi everyone. We're going to wait a minute or two until we get everybody here. So just hang tight. We'll start just in a minute or two. So
Cool.
those of you just coming in, we're just waiting a minute or two. A bunch of you have come in. I know we've got a large audience today, so just give us one more minute or so here, and we're going to let the rest of the group get in. All right. Well, I think there's some more that are coming in probably, but in the interest of time, we want to go ahead and get started. I first want to welcome all of you. If you don't know me, I'm David Fike, President and CEO of Leadership Maryland, and we have partnered with our sponsors today, Qlarant, and we are really excited to bring you this uh, webinar about AI. And I will say this idea came from two of our members of last year's executive program. Both of them are here today, Kenny and Will, and I'll let them introduce themselves in just a minute. But we are always looking for ideas that we can help educate our alumni base and even outside of our alumni base. So there are many of these educational sessions that are probably going to happen as we move forward. And this is one of our first forays into this area to try to give education and give thoughts to improve your world, whether it's business wise or in the work world. So, with that, I am going to move this over to our host today, Kenny Clash, who will introduce himself and kind of welcome you into this session. So, Kenny, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you again, Clarence, for your sponsorship. Thank you, Leadership Maryland, for helping to build all this momentum for the event. And welcome, everybody. We're excited that you're here. This conversation is not about the hype. It's not about the buzzwords. It's not. It's really about understanding AI and what role it can play in your professional and personal lives. And when I say AI, that's become sort of this catch-all for many emerging technologies out there. But today we're going to talk about large language model tools, or LLMs, is what will say. Examples of those would be Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot. As David said, I'm your host, Kenny Clash. My background is in operations and technology. I am co-founder of Handtech, which is a mobile app development company out of Columbia, Maryland. I spend most of my time at Intentional Philanthropy out of Bethesda, Maryland. We support 21 family foundations across the country. And I'm also on the State Board of Education, where I'm very, very passionate about providing supports, access, and guardrails for the tools we're going to talk about today for educators and students. But I'm not the expert in the room. That honor goes to Will Mapp. So I'm going to toss it to him so he can introduce himself.
Well, thanks, Kenny. First, everybody, thanks for coming. I'm hopeful that today you're going to learn a lot about AI technology, but also to have a good time about it. I think if you really are curious, today is really an exciting time, technologically wise, and hopefully that you get a lot out of the tool. I am the CTO of Qlarant. I've been working with AI technology since about 2015 in a number of different areas. At Qlarant, we have 50 years of healthcare fraud investigation for all of our nation's healthcare agencies. In a nutshell, we look for fraud, we help the good guys find the bad guys, and at the same time, we also have a foundation in which we actually give money back. Over time, we've given $7 million across the state of Maryland through our Qlarant Foundation. So, with all that being said, Kenny, let's jump right into it. AI is a buzzy topic. AI has impassioned people that are for the technology and impassioned people that are against the technology. So, let's kick us off. Let's get it moving.
Thank you so much, Will. So I'm going to do a little bit of grounding here very quick. So why we are here. David mentioned this a little bit, but Will and I met in Leadership Maryland class of 2025,
Fight
the
Club.
best class ever. Shout out to my classmates that are out there today. Shout out to all the leadership alumni that are here and staff, Leadership Maryland. So we connected around technology and want to ask this question, right? How do we help Maryland leaders get a sense of the moment without overhyping it or oversimplifying it? So by a quick show of hands, or you can just do this in your head, how many of you think that AI just showed up out of nowhere and you're just having a hard time trying to keep up with it, right? So back in August, when we started planning for this, ChatGPT was at version 5.0, and now it's at version 5.2. So it's not been only one, but two version releases since August. And almost every AI conversation out there centers around curiosity, skepticism, and a little bit of should I be worried or can I trust it? So hopefully, what you walk away with today is you can move the skepticism to curiosity. You can build more trust with the tools. You can feel more grounded in what AI can do for you, and we'll have a better understanding of what this could mean for Maryland. And yes, we might have a surprise visitor here, so stay tuned for that. So let's dive right in. Demystifying AI. I'm going to cover some myths and then we're going to toss it to Will. But think about some of the common myths in AI. AI thinks for you, right? People don't think for themselves. If they use AI, AI is going to do all the thinking for you. AI does not know things. It's not thinking, folks. It predicts patterns. And will go a little bit more into this. Another myth is AI is always right. No, AI is not always right. Um, Sometimes it even hallucinates, and we'll go a little bit into that as well. Then the final myth is AI is only for tech people. That is not true either. With these tools out here now, it's very user friendly, and you don't have to have any tech background to be able to utilize them. So let's turn to the year 2040. Will, the year's 2040, where will AI be in our personal lives and our professional lives?
Yeah, that's a good place to start off. Everyone likes to predict the future. I'm no different. That far out is really hard, but one thing about AI technology is that we've been using it for a while. Anything that mimics human behavior or human decision making is considered AI. In 2040, I would expect AI to be more in the background, more magical. It'll be another technology. We may not even call it AI. We'll just start accepting that the technology does many things on our behalf. Um, this year is the year supposedly of the robot, 2026. We saw a lot of robots at the Consumer Electronics Show this year. I would expect to actually have more robots as part of our society. We see this a little bit now on college campuses. If you go to College Park, we saw robots there, a great humanoid robot. We could shake its hand, it could say hello, it could pick up things, it could walk around. By that time, the technology will be advanced to a point where they can actually move amongst us and do more than just transport, your food from one point on campus to your dorm. You know, Also, we will start seeing more consumer-focused robots. Now, you can build a humanoid robot that's about 5 feet tall for about $20,000. We will start seeing that price go down over time, and the utility of these bots a little bit more. Many of us have Roombas, and people now are accepting of those robots roaming around. By that point, it'll be really magical. And my colleague yesterday, reminded me that, any technology that advances to a certain level would appear to be magic. And that's where I think AI will be by that point in time.
All right. Thank you so much, Will. So what it sounds like is you're saying AI will be moving more seamlessly behind the scenes,
Yeah,
and integrating in our lives,
yeah.
and we may not see it, but it will evolve to a point where it's more seamless.
Yeah. So like today, we have agents and we're starting to see people use agents, but they're kind of clunky and kind of kludgy. Um, with the progression of those technologies, we could have a personal agent. You could have a personal agent, and then our agents would actually communicate with each other to get certain things done, and we'll just task these things to say, hey, I need to pick up my dry cleaning, go send a robot to go get it for me. Now, with that being said, yes, that is a very speculative future. I can be very Pollyanna. When I was a kid, I was promised a flying car by the year 2000. I still haven't gotten my flying car yet. But in 15 years, 14 years, yeah, I think we'll see more robots.
Really like that. And I think since you brought up the flying cars, we do have autonomous vehicles out there.
We
Where do
have
you
that.
think those will be?
Oh my God. All right, all right. So last year I found myself in San Francisco over the weekend, and they do some testing in DC, which is where I live, but to actually see passengers in autonomous vehicles with no driver, it threw me for a loop. The technology is getting better and better, every cycle. It's advancing very, very quickly. I think it would just be a regular part of life to be able to task an Uber to come pick me up. A member of our dev team has a Kia, and the upgrade of his Kia has a beck and call system where if it's parked, it can at least come to you if your phone is in your pocket. So again, it's like these technologies are here with us today. Like this is today where we can have a car come to get us, right? In the future, it'll be more socially acceptable. We'll be used to it. It'll be old hat. Especially for people who are just being born and teenagers in 15, 16 years.
Okay. So that's the future.
Mhm.
Let's ground folks on sort of the history and the context of the underpinnings of the technology. So, can you talk a little bit about the historical context, how we got here at a high level, and how tools like ChatGPT actually work?
Sure. So whenever we start talking about this type of conversation with AI, the technology is actually old. The idea is actually old. The one thing that, if you dig up your history book, the idea of a mechanical Turk that can play chess against someone, that was in the 1700s, right? An automaton is essentially a robot made out of wood, can pick up a chess move, play a player. So it's a really old concept, and mankind has always considered the idea of having machines do work on our behalf. The technology that we use today, its origins actually started in the 1950s. The idea of consuming massive amounts of information, then using mathematics to then, create decisions or execute decisions. That's a really old concept. The math is fairly old, but we didn't have the actual computer technology to do that. Um, in the last decade, with breakthroughs from NVIDIA and other chip manufacturers, we were able to build computers that can massively and at scale crunch large amounts of data. And the critical thing, and what's really nuts about this, is that its intuitions are really based upon how we actually perceive the world. You know, so I always tell people, I have two kids. I got two kids, right? I've been around them long enough that I can predict what they're going to do. I can kind of predict whether or not they're going to feel like going to school, right? That doesn't make me a savant. That's just that I've been around them for so long. So if you're able to take all of this information, if you're able to consume all the written text on the planet, which is where we are with GPT-5, right? Then yes, you can make a machine that can use mathematics to crunch out and crank out text. You can use a machine to input a prompt, which is what we do with ChatGPT every day, and describe it, and it's able to generate text. That is not magic. It's definitely not, like dark magic or anything like that. It's really all mathematics. And if you take a little bit of time and really think about it, those same intuitions on how we perceive a lot of information and we make our own predictions, we actually do that with math and numbers. So with all the text that we have in the world, we convert that to numbers, right? We convert pieces of words to numbers. We can convert entire blocks of words to different numbers. And if we have those numbers, we can do a bunch of cool stuff with it. We can multiply numbers, we can divide numbers, we can add them together. But one cool thing that we can do is that we can take one batch of numbers and then we can measure distances between those numbers. And that's how a lot of what we perceive ChatGPT and Gemini actually doing its thing, it's really just numerical math. And so there's a little bit more sophisticated in there. Our marketing director didn't want me to put nerd on my title for this webinar. So we're just going to leave it at that, and we'll go deeper as we go far along today.
Thank you so much, Will. So when you hear large language model tools, Will just explained some of the logic behind that, right?
It's one big
Having,
math model.
yep, big math model, all of this information existing, and by math, trying to predict what it is you need to see in these little chat experiences. So thanks for going through that. I think that was really, really helpful. And I know folks really look at ChatGPT as Google search on steroids, right?
Mhm.
Um, One of the framings I like to say is AI is best for getting you from zero to a solid draft of a document. You're still the editor, and you still got to be sort of the decision maker. So, Will, can you talk a little bit how this technology is different from a traditional Google search?
Sure, sure. So with Google search, one of their big ideas is that we could take all the web pages that are on the internet, and we can go through those web pages and lift out, specific keywords, like nouns, names, places, that sort of thing, subject matter. We can lift that out. And what their idea was is that if we have one web page and then 10 other web pages reference that other single web page, it'll bubble up in its rankings because obviously it's more important, or people think it's more informative because multiple people are referencing or linking to that web page. That's their technology, PageRank. That's what they did. What's different about an LLM or using ChatGPT or using Gemini and its huge corpus of information is that it takes all of these web pages, all of the books, all of the encyclopedias, some of the movie scripts, and unfortunately, it takes all of that information, converts it all into numbers, right? And so you have a big, big, big bucket of just numbers, and those numbers are all strung together. Now, when we go to ChatGPT, right, we enter in our own series of text. We enter in a prompt. We're asking a question. Hey, ChatGPT, you know, can you create me a comic book script about a character who finds a time machine and has an adventure, right? Now, ChatGPT, the first thing it does is that it converts that prompt to a string of numbers, right? And then it takes that string of numbers and it performs some math against your numbers, against the entirety of its corpus. And because we can do all kinds of great operations with numbers like adding, subtracting, dividing them, even stringing them together as one group, right? ChatGPT is able to lift out comic book scripts, right? It's able to lift out a script about time travel. It's able to lift out, Jules Verne novels, right? And that's how it's able to generate and lift that text. And with a little bit of random numbers, that's if you want to call anything magic, a few random numbers to scramble that text, it gives you that freshness, right? It's spitting out a whole brand new set of numbers, then it converts that numbers back into text, and with alacrity, it can generate a comic book script about a kid who lives in the city who found a time machine and have an adventure. I've done that prompt myself just to try it out. I haven't gotten an option for a movie or anything, but that's the underlying principle and the differences between search and the differences between using a large language model like ChatGPT.
Really, really appreciate that. So what I'm hearing from you is if you do a Google search, you might return some information, some articles, some links, and what have you. Um, but if you can prompt to something like ChatGPT, you might be able to get it will predict and do the math that you said. I'm not going to go into that. That was great. It was fascinating the way you put it together, but it could deliver a document that it thinks you want based off of all of that, the research, the data, the information that you might get from Google search.
Yep. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind though, like with today's webinar, we also want to talk about safety. These tools are designed to generate an output, right? And there's been some famous examples where people have gone in to generate, a legal opinion or a legal response, and then ChatGPT has made up false names, has associated people with places that they've never been in their life. And the reason why is that these systems are designed to generate. And if information isn't there or parts of detail aren't there, the system's going to find the best or most probable next sequence of words and deliver that back to you. That's why it sounds so fresh and so great and so authoritative all the time. Your Google search traditionally, if there's nothing there, I found this out yesterday. I searched for some really crazy thing, and Google's like, there were no results for your search. Here's a second best set, right? That's the difference. Search returns what it can find. LLMs, they generate, and they generate if something is there or whether or not it's there.
Thank you so much. And I got to dive into this as a follow up because you mentioned it. When ChatGPT makes things up, right? It generates things, and if you haven't covered that in your prompt, it's going to make something up. So, how important are the prompts, the inputs to these things? And before you answer that, I will say in my own experience with using ChatGPT, and I know it's an important document. I even prompted to not make anything up, be
Mm-hmm.
grounded on real data, real information that can be cited when I'm spinning up a document or something. I make sure to always say, hey, don't make this up.
I can imagine you like warning ChatGPT with your finger. Um, so what you are describing is a little bit of prompt engineering. It's the idea of structuring a prompt so that you can get better or improve results that come out of it. The tools are so advanced now that we can actually inform the LLM, as you said, not make anything up, but also we can inform the LLM to constrain its results to some domain. We can have it say, don't give me a comic book script. I'm going back to this. Don't give me a comic book script based upon anything from Marvel, right? We can actually constrain it that way. That entire concept of having like a preamble or a context and giving it to the actual LLM, that's called prompt engineering. Now we're getting better at this too, right? We can also inform ChatGPT to look at websites. So if we have a reference point or we want to cite like a published paper, we can actually ask ChatGPT to summarize it, and it will actually take results from one source and not make up anything if it can't find anything. There are great tools that do this. Another colleague of mine brought up Notebook LM, where she took blog articles and converted that into a podcast. And so it's using LLM technology underneath, but then it's generating audio, and that forms that whole Gen AI arena that we're in today.
All right. Thank you so much. Um, so let's shift into responsible AI.
Uh oh.
Some simple rules of thumb here. We know you don't want to put social security numbers
No.
in ChatGPT. You don't want to put your payroll data in there, performance reviews, HR sensitive data, right? But we also know that there are free versions and there are paid versions, and that data is handled differently based off of your user access level, right? So you got free tools that are like a public notebook, and then the paid or enterprise tools are more like a locked office drawer in your office, if that makes sense. So, Will, can you talk a little bit about the risk of using AI?
All right. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. And yeah. Okay. So first, like let's not let any risks go away from curiosity. Let's just level set there. Some safety precautions. So you listed out some of the big ones. You don't want to put social security numbers, transactions, account numbers. We work in health, right? So you don't want to put protected health information into one of these systems. Um, Other than that, one big area that is really important that's really starting to come into focus is developing policies around using these tools and these products. If you have a strong set of policies, what's called an AI governance, in the industry around how these tools can be used, what can they be used for, that will actually inform your employees and help protect your organization from abuse of these tools. Now, at the same time, there was a big article or big news that came out this week that Anthropic and OpenAI are now opening up their systems to perform health records at a consumer level, right? They can process and analyze a consumer's health information and then help guide them through some other actions that they may take for their health. Here's the kicker though. For systems like that, there's a legal contract called a business associate agreement. And this agreement really is bound between like hospital and health systems and third parties and vendors that handle this type of information. And it really helps build I guess, a surrounding of trust that the tool itself, the software that uses the tool, it's actually treating all of your HIPAA data appropriately. So on one end, look around the legal front, with a BAA, a business associate agreement, craft policies to help your employees and your company have solid terms of use for the tech, and then apply some really good cyber sense, like no personally identifiable information if you don't need it, no protected health information if you don't need it. Keep those details to a very minimum, But again, it's a very powerful tool. It can be useful in many, many areas in health and in other areas as well, especially education.
Thank you so much, Will. So, what I'm hearing from you is the risk isn't AI, the risk is people using it without guidance.
The risk is human, yes.
That's right. So, So where's AI already showing up? You know, Will, where are organizations already using AI today? And what's the real benefit, not the hype?
So the thing is that many of us are using AI. We may not even realize it directly. There's this idea of agentic AI that's really popular right now. Agentic AI is the use of building out these workflows that can accomplish a task, right? You may have an accounting agent, and that accounting agent may consume your banking information and then automatically put it in the right accounting buckets, right? And it may do that in a stepwise fashion. And it may use LLM technology to really analyze all the financial data and financial information that it consumes. So that's one use case of it. Um, One of the most popular use cases that we always see everywhere is that LLMs are used to generate and write text. If you are an organization that writes a lot of proposals, there are dedicated tools now in which you can feed in your own capabilities. You can feed in what an RFP is asking for, mix those two things up, and then the LLM can actually generate some really good, boilerplate for you to use in your response. So that's another corporate use. Um, I personally like to write, but there are times where I may use AI to actually smith my words. One of our marketing people likes to talk about razor writing, and sometimes I can get too wordy. And so I will actually have a block of text that I may have written, and I may ask AI, like, can you clean this up? Can you make it more concise? Can you make it persuasive, more authoritative? You can actually tack on all those personas with LLMs, and I think it does a fantastic job for that. Um, Areas that may not do as well, we're still not there with math yet. A lot of these LLMs, we just got the word strawberry properly corrected in Chat GPT in the last year. So there are some areas that are really great for the technology. Then there's some areas where you have to go in and still proofread it and treat it like it's a talented intern, but not an expert.
All right. Thank you so much. And hopefully by now in this session, you're starting to feel like you're not behind. But also, I feel like it's important to say you're not behind, but if you ignore this technology for 2 more years, you might be. And I think we have a visitor here. So let me share my screen here. I think somebody wants to introduce themselves. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So this looks like we have ChatGPT is here. If you haven't seen this, I thought about this. Some people may have not seen this interface before. Okay. This is where I would type prompts in here. And this button here is where I would dictate prompts in. But I'm going to go straight to voice mode and conversation mode and let ChatGPT introduce themselves. Hello, hello. Are you there?
Hello, I'm here and ready to go. Let me know what you need.
Okay. So ChatGPT, I have approximately 70 people here on a webinar that are excited to meet you. Could you introduce yourself? We have folks that may be skeptical, maybe not have used you before. Can you talk about how you can be an admin assistant, some of the roles you can play, some of the things you can do, and some of the myths that are out there and dispel those?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. It's great to meet all of you. I'm ChatGPT, basically a virtual assistant powered by artificial intelligence. Think of me as a really flexible tool that can help out with a whole bunch of things: answering questions, brainstorming ideas, drafting emails, or even just chatting through a concept you're working on. In terms of roles I can play, I can be a bit like a sounding board if you're brainstorming, a research helper if you need info, or even a bit of a writing partner. Some folks like to use me for summarizing articles or coming up with creative content, and others just need a quick hand with daily tasks. Now, about those myths, one common misconception is that I'm here to replace humans. Not at all. I'm more like a tool to make your life a bit easier, not to take anyone's place. Another myth is that I always get everything right. I definitely do my best, but I'm not perfect, and I'm always learning. So feel free to ask me anything, and let's dive in.
Thank you so much. We may call you back at the end of this, but thank you. That's it for now.
You're very welcome. I'm here whenever you need me, so just let me know. Enjoy the webinar.
Man, ChatGPT is so cheerful.
Yeah. So, we hopefully that brings things together for some folks. And, this is not a human and it doesn't think like a human, but it feels like a human. And if you approach the prompts like it is a human, you may get more out of the experience. What do you have to say about that, Will?
Yeah, there's a lot of thought on this. I actually someone shared a set of system instructions, and when you talk about prompts and prompt engineering, with the advanced level of using these tools, you can actually write pages upon pages of system instructions bounding the LLM. And this person is a pastor, at a church, and a biblical scholar. And their system instructions and pages of it was really written from a spiritual perspective to have ChatGPT operate with integrity, to have ChatGPT not lie, to have ChatGPT back up its sources, right? And so when you're communicating that, it seems very, very humanistic. However, and I spoke to philosophers about this, it is still a machine. And that machine has just consumed such a vast amount of data that that machine can actually make predictions based upon what you're asking it. It can run algorithms and calculations using all of that numerical analysis that we talked about earlier. And then it is just generating results. It's not conceptualizing its results, it's not thinking about its results, it's actually executing the algorithms. Now, however, if you talk to the right or wrong, in your opinion, neuroscientists, they will tell them we do the same thing, except that, our brain does that intuitively. Like we go through some of the same mechanisms. But it is not thinking, it is a machine, right? And it is running programs and computations. The reason why it seems human is because we fed it human data. Like that is the scientific answer. So you're gonna make me sit on my hands at some point because I'm pretty sure someone is thinking the opposite.
No, no, that's really, really helpful, folks. And we'll bring ChatGPT back in one more time later on. Let's dive into some of these media narratives, what you're hearing out there.
Mhm.
So in terms of power consumption, you might
Uh-oh.
hear, well, AI is not eco-friendly. What can you say about that?
Um, AI isn't very eco-friendly. So yeah, so I think one thing to keep in mind is these chips, like these H200s that are out now. These chips consume massive amounts of energy for them to operate. I will always use the example Lee Sedol versus AlphaGo, big championship thing. It was formerly it was the human against the computer playing chess, right? The game Go has many more moves, almost millions more moves than chess. And the idea is that a machine could not beat a human because humans are more intuitive in playing games. And so AlphaGo went up against Lee Sedol, best out of seven during the week. AlphaGo won 5-2. And in the end, when it came down to it, AlphaGo burned 1.3 megajoules of energy during that week. Lee Sedol, the human being, burned 85 watts, during that week. You had to sleep, you have to eat, you burn calories, about 85 watts. And so my opinion with that is that when you're consuming that much energy, I would expect you to win. If I could consume 1.3 megajoules and then and use that to apply to a task, I think I would be pretty good at it too. Um, the difference between us and the machine is that we don't scale. And when you scale out all those processors, all those computers, the power to actually run those computers, the water that's used to cool those computers, the fuel to get it in there, we have to figure out some better technologies to make this stuff work. That is the reality, right? And we're starting to see some of these companies sign nuclear power plant deals now in order to power these systems so that they don't rely on coal, they don't rely on methane gas to power them. It is a very challenging and really hot topic that's out there now. So hopefully that's me giving you a lot of facts without telling you we're actually feeling the matter.
Thank you for that answer. And another um, media topic I would say is that folks, the perception of AI is you didn't really mean it
Hmm.
if you generated it by AI, right? If someone can tell that you generated this on ChatGPT, they feel like it doesn't mean as much. Can you talk a little bit about the stigma and the bias that is developing there?
Yeah, so I have an 18 and a 15-year-old now, and the what has entered the zeitgeist is, oh, that was generated by AI. It was like, or what you just said, that was generated by ChatGPT, right? So it's entered this idea that AI generated things just don't have as much value or carry as much weight. What I would push back on that to a limit is that start with your own voice, right? Like if you have an idea, start cranking that out. Use the AI as a coach. ChatGPT just said we could chat through this idea. We can chat through an idea just as if it was another human being. In the end, what you craft is something that you created. You used another tool to massage it, and we've used tools throughout our life. Once upon a time, people said that if you didn't use a film camera and hand tint the resulting picture and you use a digital camera with Adobe Photoshop, that wasn't your photo. We have a different perspective of this now. I will say though, when it comes to things that affect us culturally, that's where we draw a really fine line, and I think that's what we're seeing. Coca-Cola has been generating Christmas commercials for the last couple years using Gen AI technologies. They get mixed results. McDonald's just apologized to the entire country of the Netherlands for their AI generated commercial. They used lifelike looking people, with all the different scenarios that we'd expect at Christmas, but you could tell it was AI. And it so turned off the Dutch public that it was an outcry on social media, and McDonald's apologized for this, and it just didn't go well. So we're still developing. What does it mean when I create something? What does it mean if I use AI to create something? And it really is around a cultural lens on how we look at it.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for that answer. We're going to shift to the Maryland lens. If
Uh
we can
oh.
think about it, we're going to sprinkle a
I was
little
trying not to get
Old
in trouble.
Bay. Yeah, we're going to sprinkle a little Old Bay on this conversation now. So for this section, I have a disclaimer. The views that we're sharing today are our own. They don't represent Qlarant. They don't represent Leadership Maryland, our employees, Maryland State Board of Education, or any organization we're affiliated with. There are some hot topics in Maryland, even right now. Will and I met in Annapolis yesterday. So we know that AI can transform the ways we approach transportation, education, healthcare, finance, and a slew of other topics. So let's take a second and just think about education, and we can think about data centers. Can you talk a little bit about data centers and sort of all of the conversation and momentum around data centers in Maryland?
Yeah, yeah. So this is really hot, especially in a few specific counties in Maryland. The one thing to keep in mind is we've always had data centers in Maryland, and we've always had big ones. Digix had a huge data center and cluster of sites on Route 1 in Prince George's County. Right now, we're looking at bringing in more data centers into this state. and there is a lot of pushback against those data centers. Right now, they're wanting to build a data center complex just inside the Beltway, again in Prince George's County. The thing is that I think for Maryland, weighing the environmental impact of bringing these data centers in, specifically when large parts of our economy are based upon natural resources. Like we all value the Bay, right? We all value Ocean City in the Washington, D.C. area. We all value the Potomac. Um, that water has to come from somewhere. The hot water has to go somewhere. And we have enough information and detail now that the waterways and areas on the West Coast are being severely impacted by data centers. So we really have to take a measured approach on what is really going to be an engine and a benefit for Maryland. And I think we should build these data centers, but how we build them, how they're powered, how they're cooled, all of that has to be really thought through and make sure that we all benefit from it as a state.
Okay, thank you very much. And then on the topic of, education and our government, what are some things you can say about AI and how we can enhance the way that we work or the way that we look at or produce on the government or the state level?
Yeah, so this question seems to come up a lot. I have two kids that are still in grade school, one about to leave, and there's this idea that we should not let our kids use AI, like we shouldn't allow them to add it as part of their workflow. I think that's a little misguided. I think there are smart ways of actually integrating AI. We're starting to see like really good anecdotal evidence of introducing AI to younger kids, especially when it comes to reading. There are now Gen AI coaches where, we just heard ChatGPT understand what you were speaking, right? And so now we're starting to see AI coaches that can listen to a child reading a book and then dialogue with that student and go back and forth to say, hey, it's pronounced, cat, or here is the meaning of this sentence. And we're starting to see anecdotal results where it's improving, early childhood education by virtue of just having that coach for students that actually struggle with some of these materials. So I think that's a really good use case of it. In the production of work, I think we need to smartly integrate it in. I always have this analogy is that if you're a civ teacher and you assign a student, to write a paper on World War II, right? You could have, Lusitania, VE Day, VJ Day, all that stuff, right? And those are all facts that you can get from any source, right? And you can make up some words, structure them in such a way, and you have an essay on World War II, right? But what may be more interesting is what are the cultural impacts of the war? I know one of our colleagues is British. I don't mean this as any slight, but you could write an essay on the impact of World War II and British food. Like, like I was asked, like, why is British food the way it is? And there may be a cultural, takeaway from that based upon the experiences that many people have faced during the war that crossed over, right? And so I think there are really smart ways of introducing these technologies. We have to rethink, how we actually deliver educational content to students and then how we evaluate when they actually receive that and we want to score them and make sure that they're following a path to success. So there are some areas.
Yes. Thank you so much, Will. The future is bright for Maryland. Things are very promising, and there are a lot of conversations going on about the emergence of AI and how we can utilize these tools to position ourselves for our children, our communities, and to support folks to have better lives. We could talk a lot more about Maryland, but we are getting up to time, and we want to make sure we have time for folks to ask questions or for me to look at the questions and we can answer them. So we're going to go to our second demo here because I waited to the last minute, folks. I'm going to West Palm Beach next week with the leadership team at Intentional Philanthropy, and I'm going to have to consult ChatGPT to help me out. Hello there.
Hey there. Nice to have you back. Let me know how I can help this time around.
Well, I wait to the last minute and I need help drafting at least the first version of an agenda. Next week, I'm going to uh, West Palm Beach, Florida, and we'll be there from Monday through Friday, but we're going to meet between Tuesday and Thursday, let's say from 9 a.m. all the way to 8 p.m. because we're going to do dinner every night. Another piece is we have a boat tour on Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. And the overall goals there are just to uh, connect. We want to connect with each other, but we also want to look at some wins and opportunities from 2025. We want to look at our operations calendar and the outlook for 2026. And we also want to talk about some of our investment priorities for people and process and performance. So, could you help me get to a first draft of that?
Absolutely. Let's get that draft rolling. West Palm Beach team meeting agenda, dates Tuesday, Thursday, daily meeting times 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m., welcome and kickoff. Brief introductions and setting the tone for our retreat. 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m., reflecting on 2025 wins and opportunities. Discuss key successes from the past year and identify areas where we can improve or grow. 1 p.m. to 1 p.m., 2026 operations calendar review. Walk through the upcoming year's operational plans, key dates, and milestones. Break. 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., investment priorities, people, process, and performance. Part 1. Start discussing where we want to invest in our team, streamline processes, and enhance performance. 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., dinner and informal networking. Continuation of investment priorities, part 2. Dive deeper
Okay,
into.
okay. I see you doing it, and for the sake of time, I appreciate you doing that. We'll do some more of this offline, but thank you for that. Can you please finish drafting, and I'll talk to you soon.
Of course, happy to help. I'll get that wrapped up for you, and we can pick it up whenever you're ready.
I'm glad ChatGPT put that break in there.
So as you can see, folks, that hopefully some folks on here will be able to cross the bridge and just hop into something like ChatGPT. As you can see, this can really get things started. I heard someone ask, well, I saw someone ask, can you change up the voice? And you can absolutely. There are so many different choices. My wife actually has a guy that she really likes his voice and how he speaks. He sounds very smart and all these things. So yeah, you can definitely change up the voice there. So I'm going to turn to the Q&A, and we're going to try to answer some of your questions here.
Cool. Awesome.
Let's see. It looks like Xanthi. Hey Xanthi. I've heard that Chat GPT uses flattery to keep people engaged.
Oh, man.
Her question is that okay, or do we need to navigate that without care?
Oh, that is a fantastic question, and the answer is that yes, there's been research where it's not just ChatGPT, it's many of the LLMs use flattery to keep engaged. I think there's a couple ways of looking at your question. On the one hand, OpenAI and other companies, they want you to come back, so they want you to feel good about using the tool, and in many cases the tool is very affirmative to you and your decision making. That has had some bad consequences in specific cases, specifically with people who may not have the emotional support needs that they need in real life. However, you can actually change the persona up a little bit for in how you use your prompts, right? So you can actually provide it with system instructions where it may not be as affirmative as it should be in cases where you may be off or you may have input something erroneously. You can actually change a persona on this. And as I mentioned earlier, the system instructions that I received was a more stern chat GPT. They were more integral with how they produced their responses and less on the, everything is great, you're smart, you're great, this is a fantastic idea. It's a little bit more discerning. So you can do that in prompting and in prompt engineering.
Okay. Hopefully that answered your question, and thank you, Will. Looks like Aaron Alcher, my buddy. Good to see you here. Will, can you talk about the risk AI brings in terms of deep fakes and cybersecurity? Because we need to stay diligent on authenticity and content, excuse me.
Yeah, let's talk about the deep fakes first. There was a really notable example of deep fakes with a school principal in Baltimore County. They deep faked his voice. And essentially, they recorded a few tones, deep faked his voice, and the voice had actually gave a whole bunch of slurs. Um, what's unfortunate is that our laws haven't fully caught up yet with this technology and in protecting people's external privacy. There are too many sites out there where you can actually take photos and do something nefarious with them for people that you don't know. On that side of things, it's very, very tough right now. It's more like your mileage will vary. I try to not keep as much stuff of me online as possible as a result of that. On the other side of things, with cybersecurity, the AI cybersecurity space is starting to develop now, like in the last year. Many of the policies around cybersecurity are the same around other API or external application cybersecurity. In a very real sense, we're taking data, we're transmitting that data to another service. That service runs some software code, algorithms on it, gives us a result back. So with that, many of the common sense things apply. Like how are you connecting to that service? Are you issued your own certificates? If you're using the API from OpenAI, are you sharing your API keys around? All of those things are really good. The other aspect of things, though, is how you actually use the service and the level of that service you are using. Ideally, you don't want OpenAI, Anthropic, whomever, to take your data and use it as a fine tune for something else. Where you have your LLMs hosted at may make a difference. I know that with Amazon Web Services, they are very adamant that if you use Claude integrated with their service offerings or their other bedrock LLMs, your data is your data. They will not use it to train. They will not use it for a fine tune. And so they don't even keep your data in transit as you're using that service. They're very upfront about that. They have signed documentation on that. They'll sign a BA against it. So that's a really good way of approaching it that way. But again, like we said earlier, no social security numbers, no account numbers, nothing that's really absolutely, only feed in what's absolutely necessary to do your job.
Okay, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all of the questions.
We only got the
We
two
see if
questions? I'm
what's that?
sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So I'm gonna give you an opportunity. Will, pleasure having everybody today. Hopefully you're built some trust and you'll dive off into ChatGPT or one of the other tools out there. But Will, can you take us home and close us out?
Yeah, just be curious. This is a really exciting time to use these technologies. They're really easily accessible by everyone. So, actually be curious, try some things out. Try building a persona around your own use of ChatGPT and LLMs. We only covered one aspect of AI and Gen AI today, but there are also other tools. There are tools like Click. There are others that integrate with your spreadsheets so that you can take advantage of AI technology. So just try to be curious, but be safe while you're doing it, and take advantage of the tech. It's a good time. This is actually a fantastic time in technology. So you should definitely hop on and give this a shot.
All right. Thank you so much, folks. See you soon.
Thank you.